Hi, kiddo. Oh my God. Oh my God. Hello and welcome, or welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. This is going to be a long video, as you will know before I do. I've just been watching stuff about what's going on in government, the Elon Musk appropriation of information, his extra legal appropriation, or possibly illegal. Well, let's just say extra legal. So the rule of law is subsiding, which is, I mean, that's what people wanted. So we'll see how it ramifies. And just to get my mind off of that stuff, I decided to read some poetry, and I'm going to read you my own poetry. And I've picked out a very good number of my books. Here's the titles. It's hard. And I've picked out a number of poems from each book, so it's going to take a while. Beginning with the one that I wrote. You can hardly see that title, Quarantine Boutique. This is my COVID-19 book. Poems written while sheltering in place. And these are going to start with ones pertaining to Donald Trump. This one is called Abolish the Mar-a-Lago Crew. This government is a farrago of cretins, crooks, and clueless grifters, caballing down in Mar-a-Lago, kleptocracy of clown shoplifters. Oh, foxes guard the chicken coop, and burglars mind the till, leaving behind an awful poop, and leaving you the bill. It's time to bulldoze Mar-a-Lago. From Anchorage to Pago Pago, great white colonialist dominion, kowtows to creeps in Mar-a-Lago, who blandly offer their opinion. The races of the world as colored, red, yellow, black, or brown, inferior seem to one white dullard, himself a foolish clown. It's time to bulldoze Mar-a-Lago. Republicans, each to a fellow, including those at Mar-a-Lago, prance a respectable Othello, duplicitous like an Iago, a disingenuous, craven lot of posing hypocrites who always shit outside the pot and claim it's pearls they shits. It's time to bulldoze Mar-a-Lago. I tell you this, good citizens, native son of sweet home Chicago. It's time to chuck out Trump and Pence and GOP malevolence. It's time to bulldoze Mar-a-Lago. This one is called The Three Fingers of Donald Trump. Some of these poems will have echoes that you may know. Which I wish to remark, and my meaning is plain, though my failure is stark, dereliction my stain. The COVID-19 is peculiar, which the same I would rise to explain. Though the scientists said it was coming, I scoffed. There's no reason to dread, I repeated full oft. We will lick it as easy as pussy. And then into my fingers I coughed. Oh, the COVID-19, I declared by and by, is like a flu you've seen, so nobody will die, and I know what I mean like an expert, whose third cousin might well be Bill Nye. If today, per my count, 15 cases exist, in 2 days the amount will be none, I insist. So I spake to the unwashed and heathen, and I'm sure they deciphered my gist. I was offered a gift of free kits to do tests, but because I love grift, I demurred, and the rest's a debacle beyond understanding, exponential the growth which infests. It's the Democrats' hoax was my opening lie, but it seems like the joke's turned on me, the fall guy, and the pandemic team which I disbanded has got me looking like no Bill Nye. But myself I absolve with my painted suntan, so the blame must devolve on some other, my plan to deflect from my guilt by admission, by impugning Ching Chong Chinaman. To exacerbate hate, but be sly cowardly, so I'll insinuate it's a virus Chinese, and nobody will see while I'm pointing the 3 fingers that point back at me. This it looks like a set of 2 sonnets. It's titled Illegitimate. They gave out needed medical supplies explicitly to their supporting states, to those upholding presidential lies, leaving the rest to muddle through their fates. Shipments and hospitals were raided by governmental agents with the aim of letting those in certain regions die, so that supporters might be spared the same. Those who supported truth and honesty were made into the sacrificial lambs of charlatans who propped hypocrisy, their deeds enforced like any battering rams. We sacrificial who with Lincoln stood, denounced their malice as against the good. The confiscated ventilators, masks, were redirected per demands of party to politicians who had failed their tasks of public warning or informing smartly. Equipment from the federal stockpile went not to the states nor cities where the need grew direst, spread exploding, but got sent to private vendors so to intercede. They auctioned these supplies then to the states, which in a bidding war drove prices up, delaying movement as exacerbates an exponential increase. Soon the cup not merely overfloweth, but leaves drowned decency with corruption out of bound. But I am not going to stick with poems directly pertaining to the moment. Sorry, I'm just trying to order things here. I seem to have picked out a whole lot from The Condemnation. These are villanelles. Bury this generation. Bury this generation in the ground, and let its names go unremembered, they that willfully assented with no sound, to tyranny and terror all around, as self-indulgent, self-absorbed they play. Bury this generation in the ground. It is a people lost, thinking it found, in unconcern to pass the livelong day, that willfully assented with no sound. False words of sympathy and fear abound, yet as none stir, the future must, not may, bury this generation in the ground. Remember not the names, let not astound, that such as these frittered the while away, that willfully assented with no sound. It is the just deserts, this shapeless mound, that let itself be cowed into the clay. Bury this generation in the ground, that willfully assented with no sound. Yet it is spring. Yet it is spring. The world has come alive, as everywhere the air distributes balm. The sky is calm, the plants and beasts revive from their long hibernation. Men to wive get them, as every creature without qualm. Yet it is spring. The world has come alive. The air is warm. Birds frolic, soar, and dive that had been absent, carried by fresh whelm. The sky is calm. The plants and beasts revive. The schoolboy feels his ankles clasped in jive each moment in the classroom with his song. Yet it is spring. The world has come alive with breath of possibility, the hive soon filled with swarm that will not yet keep calm. The sky is calm, the plants and beasts revive. Amidst this joy, men plot how to deprive some other to get money in the palm. Yet it is spring. The world has come alive. The sky is calm. The plants and beasts revive. The form is a villanelle. This book contains 100 of them, and the next two books, which I will read from, also each contain 100 of them. This is titled The Precious Rose of Liberty. Yet avarice itself was seen to settle, not in but one or two, but rather most, which truth to hear this generation nettle, because it doth protest with so much metal extended, even as it like to boast. Yet avarice itself was seen to settle, which so expunged that ever precious metal compassion that was thought to be milk toast, which truth to hear this generation nettle, yet heartfelt attestations of regrettal reclaim no loss as felt from coast to coast. Yet avarice itself was seen to settle, despite the overflowing of the kettle, prosperity to which this land played host, which truth to hear this generation nettle. By many friends and fools, which tore each petal, the precious rose of liberty was lost. Yet avarice itself was seen to settle, which truth to hear this generation nettle. Decapitated people. Decapitated people, as your will come to be manifest, what will you do? This incivility that bodes for ill portends beyond the blood that there must spill, a living death. I see here not a few decapitated people, as your will. The body of a nation whippoorwill like in its motion, headless chicken too, this incivility that bodes for ill. Yet it must come, as all with panic fill. Fools caught in obvious trap, they fell into. Decapitated people, as your will. Whom will you blame for it? No codicil, hidden the consequence that you foreknew. This incivility that bodes for ill, none cared or dared to protest. Comes a chill as settled in when love instinctive flew. Decapitated people, as your will, this incivility that bodes for ill. Oh, I missed one here. Remember the line, my barefoot rank is better. I take my shoes off. I take my shoes off, let that be my rank. Much madness has erupted in the land. I make retreat as circumstance outflank. It is a bitter potion that I drank, and yet my heart is light, so I may stand. I take my shoes off, let that be my rank, though I fight not with tractor-driven tank, no weaponry nor armor close to hand. I make retreat as circumstance outflank. In life it seem one's forced to walk the plank, prisoner in perpetual remand. I take my shoes off, let that be my rank. Although an outcast, proud to be a Yank, even as these my countrymen have banned. I make retreat as circumstance outflank. The times seem dire, much madness more than prank infiltrates all the land as fears expand. I take my shoes off, let that be my rank. I make retreat as circumstance outflank. If you've read Edgar Lee Masters, you will know what poem this one is fairly tightly patterned upon. It's titled, She Wears a Blindfold. She wears a blindfold, though it make her blind, impartial justice, as is her repute. Once snatched, 'twas seen worms fester there behind, a shock to every idealistic mind that hitherto such thought naught but refute. She wears a blindfold, though it make her blind. Within one hand a sword she wield, not kind, thrust wildly, dispensations absolute. Once snatched, 'twas seen worms fester there behind. Her bandaged eyes, their empty sockets, mined by worms and maggots of their attribute. She wears a blindfold, though it make her blind. In the other hand a scale, men's lives we find balanced by ingots, sentenced to commute. Once snatched, 'twas seen worms fester there behind. So men heap ingots, not as they were fined. Her scale receive as for sin substitute. She wears a blindfold, though it make her blind. Once snatched, 'twas seen worms fester there behind. Into the Arraignment. What year is this from? That was 2003, I think. This is 2007. I don't seem to have a lot here. Just one, I guess. Now there were two, actually. I see I put the bookmark in the wrong place. I've just briefly gone through these things. Now I can't get it out. Sorry, kiddo. There we go. So I no longer remember the circumstances surrounding many of these poems. This one, probably something that I had seen on the news somewhere. The women of the enemy were bound, and by our soldiers in their intercourse penetrated our joys with laurel crowned. Haply we stripped them bare when it was found some cords to put to use, for they like whores, the women of the enemy were bound by all our company, but whimpered sound to issue as we claimed, whom no remorse penetrated our joys with laurel crowned. Left for dead, they were dead then, for a wound was fatal, and we had them by the scores. The women of the enemy were bound to understand the reason, and compound in acquiescence, spread then by their fores penetrated. Our joys with laurel crowned, we left them in the dirt of smutty ground, for which we fought, nor never conscience roars. The women of the enemy were bound, penetrated our joys with laurel crowned. And the next poem takes up that theme. It was a little girl, and after I had taken of her treasured self and shot her, had had my way with her, I watched her die. 'Tis true, nor will I as a man deny, that she perchance had been somebody's daughter. It was a little girl, and after I assessed it was my chance, despite her cry, I took the thing I wanted more than water. Had had my way with her. I watched her die, therefore without remorse, no sob nor sigh, regretful, as upon death's brink she totter. It was a little girl, and after I had done removed the corpse, so that thereby none might condemn me. I, in knowing slaughter, had had my way with her. I watched her die 100 times. Effectively, thus my actions precipitated what fate got her. It was a little girl, and after I had had my way with her, I watched her die. And the third book of Villanelle's, The Recusal. This looks like from 2009. This will be a little different to that one. I couldn't sleep a wink, but now am groggy. I fell asleep just as the sun was rising. I think I'm late for my meeting with Augie. What time is it? My mind is very foggy. Yet, is the matter really so surprising? I couldn't sleep a wink, but now am groggy. And I still have to go and walk the doggy, the sun now having climbed in the horizon. I think I'm late for my meeting with Augie. Are these wonton? I think they are pierogi. No time to eat, they look unappetizing. I couldn't sleep a wink, but now am groggy. Whatever this was, it has gotten soggy. The spoilage past potential for disguising. I think I'm late for my meeting with Augie. My noggin's feeling just a bit egg-noggy, yet Augie's waiting, whom I am advising. I couldn't sleep a wink, but now am groggy. I think I'm late for my meeting with Augie. And then that was a triad of books, a triad of Villanelle's. The next three are books that deal with the sonnet form as a stanza. So for the first two, I picked out shorter ones. I think it was in the third, I picked one that was slightly longer as my selection for this reading. I haven't really practiced this, so I don't know how long the thing will run on, but you will know from the get-go. The opening poem here. I lay my hand upon my mouth, dear Lord, as Job did long ago, who did no wrong, but proved, although he didn't speak a word, that his great love for thee was ever strong. I lay my hand across my lips, great God, and vow to keep my silence evermore, nor not complain, though rack of mind and bod hath left me prostrate, lying on the floor. Yea, these my wounds do bleed, but as thy Son, whom thou unto his crucifixion brought, nor shall I speak a word to any one, and even shall efface it from my thought. Though I despised am, yet I will say, it is thy will, Lord, thy mysterious way. For I have felt despair. Not many souls have known its like before their transmigration and lived to tell. My misery consoles me thus, that thou hast willed my devastation, that thou hast thus, dear Father, Jesus Christ, in his enduring suffering attested upon his cross, redemption sorely priced for us his sheep. Or else we had been bested in these our tests and tribulations many, in these dry days when we called out in thirst, when souls sought solace, never finding any, and even our best wishes were accursed. Yet thus our lives are lived. In pain and sorrow we find the strength to lead us to tomorrow. The soul's refinement. That was 1996, I think. Yeah. And then the next two, I think, are both 2003. The books came fast and furious that year, and perhaps it shows. It says here for FD. I don't know who FD is at this point. I have to think about it. I know I'm sure it's not Frederick Dürrenmatt. Felix Dennis, perhaps. The late publisher. Men's lives are not their own, still less their art. We travel different pathways, you and I. Yet who's to say that one way is more smart, or that another profit one thereby more greatly as according to some mean? All waters flow their own course to the sea. Carve out a path wherein no way was seen. As is the way of water, so do we. We travel each our destined course, except destiny seem a footnote, afterthought to life traversed, for faith is only kept relinquishing instead of something sought to motivate our movement, forward, on, not keeping track of what is lost or won. For art, some men care even not a fig, declaring it an excess baggage they disdain to carry, chasing something big in dreams of power and glory. Who's to say? One man a spendthrift, one a miser be, one courteous and kind, the other rude. One cheat his wealth, one eat his poverty, one love the crowd, the other solitude. Yet mostly we as live between extremes, knowing each side of things, so fair the weather, knowing the dearth and the surplus of dreams, yet never at the same time altogether, achieving at the end some wisdom if fortune be had by any lucky stiff. Yeah, I suspect that was for Felix Dennis. Oh, here's the long one, and I've said that the McKay sonnet form is very good, very suited to certain tasks, and this is one. It's very appropriate for pulling a text over from some source and turning it into poetry. So this is a little bit longer, and it's from a story from that book, The Man Who Sold a Ghost, translated by Yang Xianyi and Gladys Yang. I mean, they were husband and wife team for the Peking Foreign Language Institute, as it were. So I'll try to get through this. It's kind of, as I recall, it's kind of a stumbly one. During the time of the Han Dynasty, there was a man named Fan Shi, also named Chu Qing, from Qingxiang County in Sanyang. To Changshao of Junan he was devoted, whose other name was Yuan Po. Fan exclaimed when it came time that he must part from Chang, for both men studied, so let it be noted, at the Imperial Academy. He said, 2 years from now I shall call on your family. So they fixed upon a date. When time drew near, Chang asked his mother to make preparations for a guest. She stated, for 2 years he have not been seen by you. How can you trust he'll come? Her words anon. Fan can be trusted, and he never breaks his word, he said. And she then, in that case, I shall prepare the wine. Upon that day, Fan came. Into the hall he greeted them and enjoyed their wine. Sorry, I just remembered the story. And their hospitable grace the while he stay, and then he go away. Later, Chang met with an illness unplanned, disease as must prove mortal, as his aches be tended by 2 friends, one Tao Chun Ching and Yin Su Chang, both from his district, when upon his deathbed so he heave a sigh. Would I could see my best friend once again. But Yin protest, we nursed you while you die. What better friends than us could fortune bring? You are my friends in life, said Chang, but Fan of Shanyang is my friend even in death. Then he expired. Yet Fan, within a dream, saw Chang in sandals, dark hat tasseled, calling that he on such and such a day ceased breath, and such a day his burial deem. Chu Ching, he cried, forever without stalling, unto the nether regions I am gone. Nor me have you forgotten, but say when shall we meet again? When Fan awoke, he sighed and he shed tears. Then on the day appointed, he donned mourning clothes and cloak, so he may to the funeral to pay his last respects as men give unto men. Prior to his arrival, so began the ceremony. But when the procession had reached the burial ground, the coffin still could be no further moved. Chang's mother put her hand upon the coffin and she questioned, are you expecting something? So they will wait for a moment. Presently they caught sight of a carriage white, bearing a man drawn by white horses, and the man was weeping. Seeing Fan in the distance now, Chang's mother declared, this must be Fan Chu Ching, she said. So now friend clasped the coffin of the other and cried, go now, for death has severed, and we have separate fates as beckon keeping. So now he say farewell, and there among the 1,000 mourners, all of them shed tears. So Fan now took the rope as to the coffin was fastened, and it moved. Beside the grave, Fan stayed to weep his friend from former years, and then before he left, as though to soften the bitterness of parting, there he have planted of trees beside, as there belong, and then depart. So was the story of 2 friends as they must part, and so it be recorded, left for immemorial time, as I attempt retelling faithfully an ancient Chinese tale in English rhyme, as touch upon the deepest friendship, love. And so I think on you, my long-lost friend, whom I may never see, not several years, but even more as must divide us twain. that had known love as only can occur between a man and man. As I weep tears upon a vanished friendship once again that I remember, even as it were in its entirety, ere it must end. It may not be to share a pillowy tree as graves, so it must be rest far apart. Yet there have been a memory now left, as I must carry faithful in my heart. For such is friendship's faith, never bereft, and so I pray, think favorably on me. So I think that was one, wait, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so that was 6 stanzas or stanzas. And the story, as I took it from the text, filled 5, and then I had that last one to fill. And you can see the last one was a lot more smooth than the first ones. Small Poems is the poems I wrote. Condemnation was written to try to just mark the start of the Iraq invasion and express, I suppose, a tone of condemnation for the entire action. Through the course of that occupation and so forth, you remember the protest started at what was it, Zuccotti Park in New York, and I happened to be there, not when it first started, but very shortly thereafter. Whatever day this paper was released, I think that's the day that I was there. And throughout the course of that war, I was writing poems pseudonymously and posting them online at various places because incapable of any action and incapable of having any kind of venue for the output, I just decided to blindside different sites and so forth. And then I collected them all into this book. And they're all over the place. And I just pulled some out. This is called, And a Rogue is Married to a ... So you can see. After Kipling, a number of these poems probably were. And it starts with a quote and ends with the same quote. Recuerdas aquella tarde que me juraste amor, el cielo sin una nube, y en el jardín la flor. You promised me a rosy road when we took off together, but differently events have flowed, turned cloudy is the weather. I put my trust in you, alack, yet I ought have foreseen, when honeymooning in Iraq, so struck your fancy keen. My parents warned me not to go along with such a rogue, displayed your crucifix shone so, and tender was your brogue. It seemed that you spoke just for me. My heart and eyelids fluttered. To tell the truth, I did foresee, and that is why I'm guttered. Recuerdas aquella tarde que me juraste amor, el cielo sin una nube, y en el jardín la flor. This is called Coffee Klatsch. You may remember a booktuber and novella. She would often do a feature on her channel, which she called Coffee Klatsch. I miss her channel. The ladies round the coffee klatsch in Washington discuss the times. My lighter's out, lend me a match, love. Aren't those colors so sublime? That's the extent that morals go in Washington. But does it show amongst the menfolk's policies? Prices are high in times like these. The rabble of the lower class in Washington comprise a mass all of its own. Does this mean blacks as never seem to get the facts? Oh, yeah. You may recall that Karl Rove had a teacher, Lee Atwater, and I don't know if this talks about what became of him. It's an interesting story. Remembering Lee. Remember Lee Atwater, whose sneaky ways Bush was fond to use? Biography is worth a scan to see how he, a broken man, repented his deceitful ways, that such as Rove are bound to praise. Christians were even yet inclined to roving when they had put their mind to. How Jesus would account for that, I may not guess, by falling Pratt. So we should all be proud because this legacy's America's. Repeal the Constitution and the forefathers of note. Democracy turned such a grand fiasco on their boat. Now people flee the beachy sand, as is no cause to gloat. Oh, for a different meter here, eternity beyond. As resources diminish, yet none will curtail their use. It's each man for himself, as frantic grows the restless crowd. As restlessness competitive leads men into abuse, nor in this situation any crudeness disallowed. If bonds of mutual respect and common understanding got set in place before the crisis struck and overwhelmed, there were some recourse, diligence, and honesty commanding, yet each man by himself can hardly be by prospects calmed. Upon the left, upon the right, sits evidence aplenty, that none will help each occupied with his unique distress, as good Samaritans account for less than 1 in 20, and by some calculations, drastically, extremely less. Those as accustomed to cash flow when all the flowing stops may know its economics, though they blame themselves at first, and soon it's caging contraband and fleeing from the cops, while murder for a method grows increasingly dispersed. When one was schooled in virtue, no, they didn't teach one that all's well for common courtesy, but when push turns to shove, one's lean starvation notes another's little bit of fat, at which time one is justified to doubt fraternal love. Curtailment of excesses come externally applied, while consequences turn the neighborhood into a zone, as fraught with violation, not so many shows of pride, nor what one has he wants his competition to have known. Alas, for human virtue, if one only understood that by no other means is formed the common human bond, which when it disappears transforms the tenor of the hood, though it be Lower East Side or eternity beyond. Kind of like a time capsule back into those days. Oh, these are two, the two I did on torture, which America chiefly espoused during that time period, and I am sure is doing so again. As is their wont, the Republicans, I mean. First one titled Prisoners. It is a thing of power to have someone in control, a raghead seeking trouble, so I'll give him plenty some. It's fun to play tormentor, though there isn't any goal beyond the cruel infliction. Yeah, so maybe it was dumb. They're like subhuman animals. A person gets so sick. The hospitality is not so pleasant over there. It doesn't take a sadist to get pleasure from a kick, but I'm glad to be gone. Miasma seems to hover there. The next one is titled The Water Border. You tie some wrapping on his face, and then you tie him down. So fixed immobile, he has no recourse. Then when you pour the water, it is like to make him drown. As blind, he neither understands the source, nor can resist the awful press about to suffocate, controlled upon the incline to prolong. Though in my vast experience, it's not too long a wait, if sometimes, though the answers may be wrong. And the last one is a little bit longer. Yeah, this is going to be a long one. It's titled PTSD. On false pretext, they sent me off to murder and create. But there, 'twas hard to hold aloof vacuity of hate. And now the matter rests with me, but I don't rest at all. And it may be PTSD, but I'm not blessed at all. We are the men that don't fit in. There's no more fitting now, because nobility struck tin, with which men did endow their fantasy, as left a mess all scrambled in my mind. So I was left with PTS and D not far behind. The Army says that my SD existed pre-post trauma, so not a dime will give to me, except I have my mama to tell me hold my temper down, but she has never been there, where cognizance emerged full-blown, smack in the midst of sin there. I thought that I could be a hero, that I could go to school, but concentration nearly zero has made me look the fool. And I may know the alphabet my teachers taught to me, but first in their disorder set now PTS and D. I never knew the kind of rage as in my brain inhabits, but not a player on the stage. It is not shooting rabbits that got me to an awful fix, though you might find it funny. PTSD plays funny tricks. I wouldn't hurt Bugs Bunny. And yet at minor provocation, I'd take a school bus out. It's all because I served a nation that didn't have a doubt. Derangement by rage reinforced has got me drinking liquor, but while I cauterize the worst, hostility grows thicker. So all young men who go to war, although your cause be noble, they'll show you that esprit de corps, but leave you with the trouble. A peck of trouble, as with P, preceding T and S, and then at last a final D to lodge at your address. Wherever you may go, and with self-medication helping, there is no helping with the myth. Hostility keeps whelping, despite nobility pronounced on all the TV stations. PTSD when they have pounced, one's burden, not the nation's. From Small Poems. Into the Sheetrock Tabernacle, one of the more recent books. A ballad of antique love. The ballad is a very specific form, and this book contains 100 of them, and that is the Chicago Botanic Gardens, back in the days when we would occasionally have snow. A ballad of antique love. The crusty pedant counsels me on how to write my verse as though in imitation of great poets of yore, and to endow each line with sounds of sweet articulation, so as to weave and stitch an incantation by artifice, I toward posterity, whereby time's hand may wreak no enervation, so fame be mine to claim posthumously. Yet he, the ancient pedant, does not know that so to chase esteem were profanation. For tricks of verse craft I'll not crease my brow, aiming for jingly sounds beautification, to make a fanciful representation. I only care to trace my template, thee, to whom I write. For why pursuing station, so fame be mine to claim posthumously. To thee my life was dedicate, and thou art substance of my craft, mere replication of love unique. This secret I tell now. Thee he has never known. Pontification, pomposity, and pride, his peroration, perpetually preaching how I should be he. He condescends for my edification, so fame be mine to claim posthumously. What need of fame have I? I find elation in having thee, a side effect to me sans consequence, if through thy poetry, so fame be mine to claim posthumously. This is irregular verses, 50 poems, all pretty short and pretty irregular as the title suggests. I will read 2 of them. Let love fade. For I would love you, but you are unkind, hurting my mind with every reckless cut, hurting my heart, sad heart, which had invested, that has been tested so much it feels worse smart. Love is a word, and now let it but fade into the shade, for me to shun I vow. Truly 'twas I that failed, not love for love to its death strove, so fiercely thus assailed. I see a typo here. I think one other time I happened to need something from this and I saw a typo. Haven't been able to fix typos such as I find them without any kind of Microsoft Word. And even at this point, I don't think you can reopen these files. The borrowing. I let you go with sorrow, bid you farewell. I know what I will face tomorrow be difficult, not easy, for I accept the fault and stand alone if dizzy. Lord God, to die were better than living this. I cry, yet I act the abettor in what remains my sorrow, left here with many pains, from which this verse but borrow. I get them. There we go. This book is titled Songs of the Nights. It contains verses that came about whilst I was reading Arabian Nights. There is a whole cabal of booktubers right now and others making a plan of reading Arabian Nights over the course of, I think, a year and a half or something like that. I compressed it all into one period of 3 months, maybe, something like that, or 2 months, I don't know. I would certainly advise people to take their time with it if they choose to read it. But I was happy to have this come about. So this is just one representative poem titled Cairo. What other place is there to rouse my longing than Cairo with its comforts and delights? Where else its rich sensations riotous thronging? Where else to spend sweet days and sweeter nights? This is a paradise of loveliness, with carpets and with cushions richly strewn, a land with which fulfillment both does bless the godly and ungodly till they swoon. Compacts and covenants remain between us, people of Cairo, even if God decree that I must leave. In merit we convene us with brotherhood united faithfully. Do not reveal her to the zephyr, lest it from her gardens steal her perfumed scent to proffer elsewhere. Here the soul at rest remains, although abroad the body went. Songs of the Nights. No, not so bad. I think I misquoted some of this. This book came about in the event of the World Trade Towers coming down. And you may recall that shortly before the giant Buddhas had been blown up. I can't remember where they were, but it was a terrible devastation to culture. No, I'll read the first. Well, these aren't the first three, but these are three. Beautiful man that like the Lord, Gautama art, quiescent, meditative, toward thy open heart, I would propel mine, thou so gentle, as were a mother unto her babe, and non-judgmental. Thou art my brother. They're very short poems. To see the Buddha blown to bits has not effaced his wisdom, nor has signaled its compassion's waste. For tyrannies will come and go in passing fashion, but love may never cease its flow, which is compassion. And lastly, destruction is an easy vice for those unskilled, who do not fear the precipice and cannot build. 'Tis easy to tear down a thing, to maim and kill, but to console by comforting, Lord, that takes skill. Against holy war, and there's my dog. But my dear, he almost came over because he was jealous of that. Okay, I mentioned the poem about Victor Jara. So this is titled Para encontrarse con él. They taunted him to play, this book is titled Bestial Ballads. They taunted him to play his songs, despite his fingers broken. Him held there with the captive throngs, as though there were a joke in predicament in which they found themselves after the coup that put Allende in the ground. But what were they to do? He sang the song of unity before machine guns rattle, cut his sweet voice for all to see, sad casualty of battle. There in the self-same stadium where he had sang support, his fingers were cut off, so some eyewitnesses report. They taunted him to play and sing, then murdered Victor Hara. Voice beautiful, yet with a sting for those who covet power. Amidst the heavens, his voice glides through hill and dale to tell how to the job Amanda strides to meet with her Manuel. Te recuerdo, Amanda, la calle mojado. Well, I shouldn't do that. I will flub the lines, I am sure. Beautiful song, you should look it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube. Victor Jara, Victor Jara, it will come up. One more. I think I mentioned this one. This is titled Without a State. And so it was in South Dakota, the last of the frontier. The massacre of the Lakota through ignorance and fear occurred. So too, to fill a quota that had been preached, that here too many of the tribal band existed that once roamed the land. Extinguished are the red man's ways, best to annihilate the paltry pack that struggling stays, where go without a state. Because the future have no space for them that we create. So went the common argument that set the stage for how things went. The editor vociferous applauded the act done. 'Tis good if we continue thus and stamp out every one. We'll blunder through with blunderbuss until we own the sun. Said ownership attained by clause, they named the place the Land of Oz. How much those lines remind you of what President Trump is saying about Palestine, how he wants to remove all of those people. Extinguished are the red man's ways, best to annihilate the paltry pack that straggling stays, where go without a state, because the future have no space for them that we create. I'm not sure if I think I must have. This book is also very short poems. It's the one that came after Against Holy War, and the first one that I put out on Lulu. You master me, and yet no master, in truth, because intention leads you to disaster and unkept laws. You think, you barter, you concede, yet unawares that if cajoling provokes greed, no one it spares. And then another. What deeds I've done beyond repairing, what crimes committed, except in times so harsh and glaring they were well fitted. These times extreme and out of kilter have challenged men to liberalize the moral filter. So can we then, when all this bitterness recedes in future days, return to normalcy which needs more truth always? Can we, my foe and I, embrace when this is done, this evil that must leave its trace on everyone? So, we're coming down to the wire here. I hope you have been taking the liberty of pausing this and not trying to go straight through. I just needed something to pull myself away from the news, and since I read that poem, Beautiful Echo, it just made me feel I would like to revisit some of this old stuff. Now, this book, The Rip of Gales, is a compilation poem. There you see me at the museum in Seoul, and there I am standing by a bunch of kimchi that we happened to pass. After a fit of, and I have to say, I have no idea what prompted this, what this fit of blindness was or anything. Maybe if I thought about it, I would remember. After a fit of blindness. It is through, I know what it was. Yeah, this is about that time. It is through partial vision I proceed, not toward the shining image of your face in all its loveliness, as must recede perpetually before me on the chase. Rather, it is sweet death I amble toward, lonely alone. But you've another path, while I have only death and God, my Lord, to give me consolation from world's wrath. Did you walk here beside, it were a joy, and I might clap my hands and sing it loud, yet like a child who vainly seeks lost toy, I search the night and only find a shroud. And this next one is called Echoes. Now more than ever seems it rich, yet I lack courage so to die by suicide and force the switch from life to immortality. Trapped in a deadly prison, I have miles to go before I sleep. But by hard labor, though I try, rich promise I have failed to keep. Uphill the road lies, very steep the incline that I see before me. But though my sentence makes me weep, travails I pass through, stern and stormy. The end may be a coffin wormy, yet thitherto my flesh does itch, and since oblivion might bore me, life keeps me here upon the hitch. The Rip of Gales. Between wakefulness and sleep, this was the book which prematurely contained that poem for former President Jimmy Carter. This is titled The Tug of War. 'Tis easier to leave life than to stay, yet, oh, the leaving it is very hard, to stay and see one's loved ones pass away, with only heaven a far-off reward. 'Tis hard to live and suffer, yet to live obliges suffering on all of us, and when one lives the life contemplative, he knows how well they are synonymous. 'Tis easier to leave, and yet to go entails a suffering all its very own, no less than that which early on we know, as babes in infancy when we are born. 'Tis hard to stay when one must live in pain. In either case, to go or stay brings sorrow, nor are there any words that can explain why the departure can't be made tomorrow or tomorrow after that. For leaving, we would rather put away beyond all current frame of reference at a time less inhospitable than today. Blessed are they that have time for farewells, to say their words, though words cannot express the sadness bubbling up that no word quells, the overflow of tears not any less. 'Tis hard to leave, and still 'tis hard to stay, a tug of war maintained until the end, until the leaving gains the better sway, and those bereft have lost themselves a friend. Between wakefulness and sleep. And back to my first book. This is, I thought I might flit around here, but I should be cutting this short, I think. This is called The Pearl, something I wrote, I think, while I was in the class of Paul Carroll, my teacher, The Pearl. And this, of course, harkens back to the great, I think it's Old English or Middle English poem, The Pearl, Middle English, I think. As a man who has held a pearl and lost it to the sea watches as the waters swirl for an eternity, so the sad confusion which now encompasses, I watch without illusion after my happiness. It was a gem of unknown name, as formless as the night, impossible to catch or tame, as eyes of quick delight. Turn away, the ocean only chuckled. Every hope must burn away, and the waters buckled. You have no concern this way, your precious pearl captured, nor there is no recovery, although you be enraptured. And the water ebbed and flowed, there is no recovery. And I watched it as it moved. Turn away, said the sea, turn away. I think there's some kind of echo of Yeats in there, but I can't trace it at the moment. From my book of sonnets, my first book of sonnets, I did a video recently talking about Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. This is sonnet number 73. And I should say he came to Chicago. Vivekananda, when he was in town, had many words to say to us, dear Lord, how each one as a frog is living down deep in a well, believing it the world. Sisters and brothers of America, did he begin his talk of toleration, declaring all as subject to the law, an indivisible, united nation. When that religious parliament was held, no wonder many people stood aghast, and 100 years ago, as clear he spelled out how, in thy great scheme, the first is last, the meek exalted, and the high made low. And many were amazed to hear him so. And this is my first dedicated book, Embodiment and Release, a compilation preceded this, and then this one was the first book that I set about to write as a book. And this book is my last. Did I put some kind of a 2023? So it'll be 2 years, possibly the last poems. And this, I think, talks about that. I was very conscious of the fact that I was probably writing my last book of poetry. Fictive deliberation poetry, or else deliberate fiction. This it is. And I return, but now my eyes can see with clarity what in youth seemed amiss. It felt, indeed, a grandiose conundrum, but knowing now the place for the first time, the ancient mystery seems almost a humdrum. Now I, who was the stranger, know my climb. Indeed, if this slim sheaf be my farewell, then I bestow my fondest salutations upon my muse, who taught me how to tell, and stayed by me through various deprivations. I warmed my hands about love's open flame. Now I depart, a wiser than I came. So you hear some echoes there as well. And with that, well, that is not the final poem in the book. I see I relied on my box English, not box English, box German for the final poem, but I won't read that one. I'll leave it there. And so ends my poetry reading. An hour and 15 minutes. I needed to get that out of my system. I will post this on Poetry Thursday. I hope you have had the foresight to pause the video at times if you made it through to this extent. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.